Welcome to Mother's Revenge, where heartfelt stories touch your soul and may even bring you to tears. The words hit me like shattered glass against my skin as I stood there in the opulent lobby of the Grand Legacy Hotel, dressed in my tailored navy suit. "Get this beggar out," my father, Richard Caldwell, said loud enough for everyone to hear. The security guard's hand hovered near my elbow, not quite touching me, a flicker of embarrassment on his face. I watched my mother Eleanor, her eyes dart away from mine, refusing to make contact. My sister Valerie, her lips curled into that familiar smirk I'd seen since childhood, the one that said she'd won again. My name is Aaron Caldwell. I'm 30. And this is the story of how I turned an invitation revocation into a financial revelation. The betrayal shouldn't have surprised me. For years, I'd been the family ATM, the successful but difficult son who could be counted on to fund everything from emergency home repairs to luxury vacations. Always with the promise that I was investing in family. What they didn't know as they celebrated in that grand crystal ballroom was that I quite literally had been. The venue they'd chosen for their exclusive family celebration was rented under my LLC Caldwell Solutions Group. The gourmet catering with the champagne fountain my mother insisted was essential was paid from my business account. The airline tickets for relatives flying in from across the country were all processed through my corporate card. They thought it came from my father's retirement package, a fiction he'd maintained to preserve his image as the family patriarch and provider. The truth. He hadn't received anything beyond a gold watch and a modest pension that barely covered their monthly expenses. I didn't scream or cause a scene as I walked away. I simply straightened my back, maintained eye contact with the security guard to signal I'd leave with dignity, and walked steadily to my car in the parking garage. My mind already mapping out my next steps. They want a beggar fine. I'll show them what a beggar can do. I navigated my car out of the hotel grounds past the tree-lined avenues I'd quietly funded for years, then down the concrete ramp to level B of the parking garage. Only after Id securely closed my car door did I allow my hands to tremble slightly as I opened my banking app. A meticulous battle plan, years in the making, was about to begin its execution. My fingers glided across the screen, initiating a series of actions with chilling precision. $10 or $500. Banquet catering at the Crystal Ballroom canceled. $15, $200. Valerie's Santorini honeymoon flights revoked. $5, $800. Mom's Palm Springs spa weekend with her garden club terminated. And the largest sum, the deepest cut, $62,000. Monthly payments for the oceanfront villa in La Jolla frozen. As I hit confirm for each transaction, a cold rush of adrenaline coursed through me. I recalled how carefully I had set up every single one of these payments through my Caldwell Solutions Group. I had built an intricate financial web disguising expenditures under the guise of Dad's retirement package to protect his fragile ego. It was a perfect smokescreen held up by threads of their blind trust and financial dependency. For 5 years I had prepared for this day. Not with a spontaneous burst of anger, but with the cold, sharp calculation of a businessman. This wasn't revenge, I told myself. This was the enforcement of the terms of an unspoken contract, the termination of a unilateral business arrangement. The sense of release I felt was potent, almost dizzying. By the time I pulled into my driveway, 20 minutes later, my phone was vibrating continuously. First my parents, then Valerie, then numbers I didn't recognize, which I assumed were panicked relatives. I smiled grimly. The facade had indeed begun to crumble. Only minutes after Id settled back into the quiet of my home, a forceful pounding at my front door made my heart jump into my throat. Through the peephole I saw Derek Miller, Valerie's husband, his face flushed, crimson shirt wrinkled and half untucked. His usually composed demeanor had completely unraveled. I silently slid the deadbolt into place, the solid wood between us a welcome barrier. Reaching for the thick folder I'd prepared 5 years ago, the one labeled contingency in my neat block handwriting, I braced myself. "You need to fix this right now," Derek shouted through the door without so much as a hello. "They just canceled our food. The hotel won't release the rooms, and our honeymoon tickets got voided while we were literally checking in online." His voice was a mixture of outrage and raw panic. I leaned against the door frame, feeling an odd sense of calm. "Strange," I replied, keeping my voice neutral, almost conversational. "Sounds like someone didn't verify who actually owned those payments, wouldn't you say?" Derek blinked rapidly, processing my words. "You did this because they kicked you out, didn't you?" he accused, his voice dropping slightly laced with disbelief. "No," I said, my composure unwavering. "I did this because they forgot the fundamental rule of biting the hand that feeds you. Make sure that hand isn't holding all the receipts." He tried peering past me into my apartment, perhaps searching for signs of my parents, or maybe looking for hints of regret on my part. But regret had checked out of this situation long ago. I held up the folder, thick-tabbed, color-coded inside. It contained signed contracts with Caldwell Solutions Group listed as the financial sponsor cancellation clauses with my signature as sole authority and payment reversals processed within the hour of their betrayal. I tapped it against my palm. "I warned them 5 years ago that if they treated me like a bank, I'd start acting like one. You're punishing the entire family." He hissed, his voice dropping further as a neighbor walked past. A small, grim smile touched my lips. "No, Derek. I'm protecting my investment and cutting my losses." His face darkened. "They're your parents." "They called me a beggar in front of 40 people, I retorted, letting the silence hang. He had no response for that. He just turned on his heel, muttering something about lawyers and taking this higher. But here's the thing about financial hierarchies: you can't climb higher than the person who holds the ledger, the contracts, and the backup drive. I closed the door, the click of the lock echoing the finality of my actions, and walked to my home office. Placing the contingency folder down, I picked up a fresh, pristine one and labeled it Inheritance Audit Phase 2. This wasn't just about reclaiming what was mine. It was about uncovering the full scope of their financial deception. By morning, my inbox contained 32 new messages. Some were politely pleading, some openly threatening, all tinged with panic. My mother, Eleanor, wrote, "We didn't mean what we said. Emotions were high. Can we talk?" No apology, just a desperate plea wrapped in denial. My father, Richard, sent nothing directly, just a forwarded invoice from the Grand Legacy Hotel, now unpaid and demanding immediate settlement. It was a clear attempt to use the weight of the outstanding debt to pressure me. But my favorite message came from the family group chat I'd been removed from years ago. A screenshot sent by my cousin displayed Valerie's typical condescending tone. "Aaron's always been sensitive. He'll come crawling back. He always does." I laughed aloud in my empty kitchen, a bitter, satisfying sound. Then, with a deliberate calm, I replied to the entire group, addressing no one in particular. "Just a reminder, I own the crawl space and I've changed all the locks." No one responded. The silence was deafening, a testament to their sudden realization that the rules had changed. That afternoon, an unexpected message appeared in my inbox from Mr. Harrison, my parents' accountant. He requested a meeting to discuss certain irregularities he'd noticed. Specifically, that payments for their beloved oceanfront villa in La Jolla hadn't been coming from their trust as they'd claimed, but from an LLC he couldn't identify. My parents had given him my email years ago when I first started handling their tax documents, and he'd kept it in his records mine. This was the opening I'd been waiting for. I knew Mr. Harrison was a meticulous man, and this irregularity was about to unravel everything. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about exposing the systemic exploitation that had been their family's foundation. When Mr. Harrison and I finally spoke, his voice was tight with professional concern. I confirmed his suspicions about Caldwell Solutions Group being the unidentified LLC funding the oceanfront villa. The relief in his voice was palpable. He clearly valued transparency and proper accounting. Then I asked the question I'd been waiting 5 years to voice, the one that would turn this family drama into a legal battle. Have they declared that oceanfront villa as their asset in annual filings? The silence stretched for several seconds, heavy with implication. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head, the rapid review of years of tax documents. They've claimed it as an inheritance gift from a private family investor. He finally admitted, his tone subdued. No documentation provided, of course, just verbal assurances. My blood ran cold, then boiled. It wasn't just ingratitude or entitlement anymore. They hadn't just been ungrateful. They'd committed outright fraud. Used my generosity, my hard-earned money, to build equity in a property I technically still owned under my company's name, all while evading taxes and fabricating a fictional benefactor. The sheer audacity of it left me speechless for a moment. Mr. Harrison, sensing my anger, asked cautiously, "Mr. Caldwell, would you be willing to sign a declaration for tax records confirming your LLC as the source of these payments?" "Absolutely," I replied, my voice sharper than I intended. The time for niceties was over. "After I call my lawyer to discuss how quickly we can serve them papers that will make that condo and every unpaid cent legally untouchable." Within 48 hours, my attorney, Ms. Sterling, called to confirm. Her voice, usually calm and composed, held a hint of excitement. "The paperwork is ready, Aaron. We can proceed as discussed." "Perfect," I said, "because this isn't about family anymore. It's about fraud." The line had been crossed. My initial reaction had been about protecting my investment and my dignity. Now it was about holding them accountable for their criminal deception. The next day, I drove to Ms. Sterling's downtown office, where the sleek, minimalist furnishings perfectly matched her no-nonsense, razor-sharp approach to law. By noon, the papers were drafted and meticulously reviewed. It wasn't just about the villa anymore. This was a cease and desist for slander, misrepresentation, and unauthorized use of funds, meticulously detailing every instance of their deceit. Crucially, there was also a property reassignment filing that legally removed any verbal claim my parents had over the oceanfront villa. Ms. Sterling slid the thick stack of documents across her polished desk. "They'll try to call your bluff, Aaron. They'll say it's just family drama, that you're being overly sensitive." I smiled, a grim, humorless curve of my lips. They already did. That banquet at the Grand Legacy, that was their bluff. This is my response. The process server confirmed delivery an hour later. Just like that, the family celebration they had so carefully orchestrated transformed into a financial reckoning. The game had officially changed from a passive-aggressive war of words to a direct legal assault. That night, a voicemail from my mother, Eleanor, arrived. It was tearful rambling and accusatory. "You're destroying us over what? A misunderstanding you always do. This Aaron, always so dramatic." Dramatic. The word they always used to silence me, to dismiss my legitimate concerns while I footed their bills. "If you follow through with this, people will talk. Our church, the neighborhood, your father's reputation." It was always about appearances, the illusion of unity, the performance of love rather than its reality. Their concern was never about me, but about them and what others thought. I let the voicemail sit unanswered, because something far more important arrived the next morning, confirmation from my accountant. Subject account transfer confirmed. Oceanfront villa title finalized. It was done. Legally, irrevocably. That villa, their prized retirement gift, the crown jewel of their social standing, was now permanently separated from their financial portfolio. And the taxes they had so expertly dodged were now filed with interest under their names. Ms. Sterling emailed shortly after. "Aaron, you've closed every door. Want to take it one step further? My reply was immediate. Yes, full audit. Start with the family trust. I want to know where every dollar went since 2017. Because they hadn't just called me a beggar. They'd built their entire lifestyle on my back. Now it was time to bill them for the chairs they never offered me. The family trust audit peeled back layers I hadn't imagined existed, revealing a systematic pattern of misuse that stretched back years. It wasn't just about the oceanfront villa. It was about every hidden transaction, every expense disguised as something else. The ledger, meticulously organized by Ms. Sterling's team, laid bare the uncomfortable truth. $18,700 withdrawn the week I graduated college, labeled emergency repairs, but actually used for Valerie's lavish kitchen renovation. $9,000 marked as education expenses that, upon closer inspection, funded front-row concert tickets and a spa weekend for my mother. $34,000 funneled into my father's vintage Mustang restoration, a car he once proudly described as my reward for raising such responsible children. They had bled that account dry, chipping away at what was ostensibly a family asset for their personal indulgences, then had the unmitigated gall to call me the beggar. The anger simmered, not a hot, impulsive rage, but a cold, steady burn of betrayal. "Is this criminal?" I asked Ms. Sterling, my voice tight. "It can be," she replied carefully, her eyes scanning the documents. "If you want it to be. We have clear evidence of misappropriation and potentially fraudulent accounting. But I didn't necessarily want jail time. I wanted accountability. I wanted the truth to be undeniable, etched into legal record. We filed a motion request for financial recompense plus trust misuse documentation. They had 30 days to respond or settle privately. The ball was now firmly in their court. That's when the mask finally cracked. A text from my mother, Eleanor, arrived late one evening. "I'm scared, Aaron. Please don't ruin the family over money. We'll make it right." I stared at it for a long time. No apology, no ownership of her actions or my father's, just raw, unadulterated fear. It was the only language they truly understood, the only emotion strong enough to elicit a genuine response from them. I responded with a single unyielding line: "Ruin your confusing ruin with reveal." The truth once hidden was about to be brought into the light, and they were terrified of what everyone would see. The next day, Valerie posted on Instagram a filtered sunset casting a faux glow over her lengthy caption, "Some people only show up when there's money involved. Glad I know who my real family is." Her words, meant to subtly shame me, landed flat. I didn't comment. I didn't need to. They could spin whatever narrative they wanted online, but in court every word required proof. Every signature could be traced. Every dollar had to be accounted for. Suddenly, the son they dismissed as dramatic had become the authority they had to answer to. Their lawyer reached out on day 22. His tone was clipped, his language desperate beneath the legal jargon. He offered a private settlement, $75,000 in restitution, no admission of wrongdoing, and a mutual non-disclosure agreement. Ms. Sterling chuckled when she read it. "They're trying to seal the cracks before the neighbors peek an errand." But I didn't want money. Not really. I wanted a record. Proof that I wasn't just the black sheep, but the scapegoat, the silent benefactor, the unpaid lifeline. I wanted it documented that I had been systematically exploited. We declined their offer. On day 25, my father Richard broke his silence. He appeared at my office, the business they'd once dismissed as my little side gig, but that now employed 27 people across 2 states. He stood in the doorway, hat literally in hand, pride barely clinging to his shoulders. His face was etched with a mixture of exhaustion and a strained attempt at dignity. "You've made your point, Aaron," he said, his voice hoarse. "But you're about to ruin us. Are you proud of that?" I looked at him, the man who'd once told a room full of relatives that Valerie was the real success story. I replied calmly, my voice steady, betraying none of the years of hurt. No, I'm not proud. I'm tired. Tired of funding your life while being written out of your legacy. He tried to speak to stammer out another excuse or complaint, but I raised my hand, cutting him off. You called me a beggar, so I stopped giving. And suddenly everyone remembered what I was worth. He didn't apologize. He didn't cry. He just placed a folded check on my desk, blank but signed. A futile gesture, a last-ditch attempt to buy back control. I slid it back across the polished surface. This was never about your money, I said. It was about mine. When he left, the heavy silence in my office was finally my own. I opened my email, a message from the court system. Trust disbursement fraud. Preliminary hearing scheduled. The date was set for 3 weeks later. This time, they'd have to show up not to celebrate, but to answer. The hearing date spread through the family like a fractured pipe, seeping into every hushed conversation and frantic group chat I was no longer included in. My cousin texted me directly a nervous confession that everyone was talking about the court date, confirming what I already suspected. They hadn't believed I'd really go through with it. They never do. They expect silence. They expect shame. They expect the one they've pushed aside to keep the peace while they feast. But this time I wasn't the help. I was the witness. Ms. Sterling and I meticulously prepared everything, a comprehensive timeline of financial transactions, precise account statements, screenshots of the numerous messages where I was asked to spot them just this once. All the invisible contributions, all the quiet sacrifices made undeniably visible. The night before the hearing, Valerie messaged me for the first time since the banquet. If you go through with this, Aaron, I swear I'll never forgive you. No apology, no denial, just a chilling warning as if my peace required her permission. I didn't reply. Some people don't want reconciliation. They want reinstatement of the version of you who stayed quiet. I knew that silence was the only true answer to her veiled threat. When the court date finally arrived, I walked into the sterile courtroom feeling surprisingly calm. My parents sat across the aisle, rigid and unyielding. Their lawyer frequently checking his watch, his face etched with a mix of resignation and irritation. The judge, a stern but fair woman, asked straightforward questions. Ms. Sterling answered them with irrefutable math. She projected charts onto a large screen, clearly demonstrating how the oceanfront villa payments had originated from Caldwell Solutions Group. She then illustrated how the family trust had been systematically siphoned for personal gain, luxury vacations, exclusive spa days, vintage car restorations, all disguised under the ambiguous umbrella of family needs. Each number, each date, each transaction was a brick in the wall of truth she was building. My parents' attorney objected, claimed informal arrangements, insisted this was just a misunderstanding blown out of proportion. The judge, however, wasn't moved by platitudes. She turned to me, her gaze piercing. What outcome are you seeking, Mr. Caldwell? I stood, my voice calm and unwavering, looking directly at her. Truth on paper, Your Honor. That's all. Let the record match reality. She nodded slowly, a slight curve to her lips. Granted. With that single word, my name was no longer just a footnote in their tangled finances. It was the headline. And for once, the room went quiet, without anyone needing to escort me out. My parents avoided my gaze, their faces a mask of defeat and disbelief. They had expected me to crumble, to back down. But the truth, once spoken aloud in a courtroom, was an unyielding force. They didn't speak to me after the hearing. No calls, no letters, no tearful, "we didn't mean it." Just silence. The kind that comes when a performance ends and the lights go out, leaving only the empty stage and the lingering echoes of applause, or in this case, the quiet hum of shattered illusions. The judgment wasn't criminal. There were no handcuffs or screaming headlines. But it was binding. The court ordered restitution of all misused funds back into the trust where they rightfully belonged. The oceanfront villa's title was permanently transferred to my name, legally solidifying my ownership. My parents were removed from any future financial access to assets they hadn't genuinely earned. Ms. Sterling called it elegant justice. I called it balance. Weeks passed. My phone stayed quiet, gloriously so. No requests, no manufactured emergencies, no guilt trip asks for just a little help this month. The mental and emotional space this afforded me was immense, a breath of fresh air I hadn't realized I'd been suffocating without. Then one envelope arrived. No stamp, no return address. Just slid under my door. Inside a single photograph from that ill-fated family banquet. Everyone was dressed in silver and navy clinking glasses under crystal chandeliers performing their roles of happiness and unity. In the background, blurry but unmistakable, was me captured mid-turn, mid-leaving. The precise moment they erased me memorialized by accident. On the back, someone had written in a familiar, hurried script. This was the moment it all fell apart. I recognized Valerie's handwriting immediately, the same slanted script that had signed countless I owe you notes over the years, most of which were never repaid. I held it for a long time, the weight of the past heavy in my hand. Then I walked it to my shredder. Because what fell apart wasn't family. It was the illusion of it, the one they'd built with my money, my silence, my desperate need to belong. And once that illusion burned away, what remained wasn't ashes. It was freedom. I created a new folder that day, naming it Caldwell Foundation. It was to be a grant for first-generation women putting themselves through school without family support. Women who understood the struggle of building something from nothing, often against the tide. The initial funding came from the sale of the oceanfront Villa Mine. 6 months later, I've had no direct contact with my parents or Valerie. Our relationship has ended permanently by mutual unspoken agreement. Sometimes the healthiest family resolution is distance maintained with the same commitment I once gave to financing their lives. My peace finally is my own.